Hello again, my little militiamen, and welcome to another Mordian glory video, or should it be Heresy glory video? And joining me is, for the first time, well, second time on the channel, but first time in a podcast style arena, is the man, the myth, the Dark Angel, the drop pod assault expert, clearly. It is Chansey!
The Oet Magir himself.
Oet Magir Chansey is here. So firstly, I want to say, Chansey, huge thank you for doing A, the battle bot with me, and then which was already took a long time, and then B, for giving up even more of your time and agreeing to do this follow-up video. So, mate, thank you so much, and it's great to have you on the channel again.
No worries. I'm happy to be here at the end of the day.
Nice,
Plus,
nice.
It means I can get you hooked on the Heresy.
Oh, dude, I'm hooked. I'm so hooked. Like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. The fish has shot itself, man. That's what's happened here.
It's pulled a grenade.
Exactly. We're just fishing with dynamite, man. So, for those of you that don't know, Chansey very kindly agreed to help me with my first ever Horus Heresy battle report. With 10th edition 40k sort of in its last year, and I still love 40k, don't get me wrong, but there's a few crazy releases coming out at the moment. It's on the crazy train. It's on the crazy train at the moment. And so whenever this kind of happens, and I've been playing it very competitively, so I'm a little burned out on it as well. And so whenever we get to the sort of last year of an edition, I like to keep my eye in on 40k, but I like to use it as an opportunity to explore other game systems, ones that I've maybe had my eye on for a while but haven't played. And so Chansey, like the whispers in the warp, suggested that we should do a Heresy game, and so we did.
Like fell Erebus.
You are.
Spring away.
You are Erebus, man. So if you haven't seen that battle report, by the time this video comes out, it will be up on the channel, and there will be a link to that video down in the description below. So there will be spoilers for that game, so if you care about that kind of thing, then please make sure you check out that video and then come over here. But if you're not that bothered, then of course stay tuned. And the game was Imperialist Militia, run by myself, the Mordian First Rifles. With
questionable tastes in Xeno art.
And then I was playing against Chansey, and you had your Dark Angels, and you were running Drop Pod Assault.
Yeah. Because it's fucking hilarious.
It's cool. It's cool. And honestly, I think straight away I knew I was in for a good time, a crazy time, but a good time, when I looked across at your army and you had, what was it, like 9 drop pods? 7 to 9 drop pods?
8 normal ones and the Dreadnought drop pod off the top of my head.
8 normal drop pods and a Dreadnought drop pod. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a good game. Straight away, I was like, I'm getting the vibes.
It's going to be cinematic at the very least.
So cinematic. I actually, before we record this video, a couple of days ago, I was doing a live stream. Oh, yesterday, actually, at time of recording, I was doing a live stream, and I showed people a clip from our battle report of what the battlefield looked like when all the drop pods were down, and the reaction from chat was, whoa. Like, whoa.
I am happy that was the reaction.
That was the reaction, man. And someone actually said, wait, how do you get so many drop pods? Are they free in Heresy?
No, I wish. I wish they were actually free as well.
They're pretty cheap, though.
Oh, God. About £40. About £40.
Sorry, not cheap in real money. I meant cheap in points. 35 points.
35 points. They're about the same in points to pound.
Yeah.
It's not a cheap but you're paying like a tax to field it.
Yes.
Because a bit like how in 40k you got the command tax if you want to use orders. In the drop pod assault you've got the drop pod tax.
Yeah.
And depending on the type of drop pod as well, there's a further potential force organization tax.
Yeah. So I think I've been terrible. I haven't done the briefing properly. We're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about that game, and we are going to just give some first impressions on Heresy. My first impression of Heresy. Obviously, you've played a few games before, but it's your first time playing the Militia, so some first impressions on that, and just generally, just get a bit of a Heresy hype train going, because I think it is a game which has been maligned, lambasted, slandered. And I think once I was blind, now I can see the scales have fallen from my eyes. And I actually think that it's a really, really good game.
It does get a bit of a negative flack. And I do think an element of that is because it's, to a lot of people, it's associated to 7th edition, rightly or wrongly.
Wrongly, in my opinion.
I didn't play 7th edition. I started in 5th, played 5th and 6th, and then took a break and came back at the end of 9th.
You did the right thing, because 7th edition 40k was...
Oh, I fell out of the hobby because of another event to do with a different game, which has now returned, oddly enough.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I stopped because of fantasy. I was that salty.
Yeah, I can understand it.
But Heresy, when I first looked at Heresy, I kind of went, oh, but it's a Space Marine game, and that was as a coming in at the end of 9th, coming into 10th. And all my friends were getting into Heresy, and I was like, but it's a Space Marine game.
Yeah. But it's not really.
No, it's not. I mean, to be fair to it, there was a large emphasis on the Space Marines. It is the whole Heresy. It's when the Legion Astartes went rogue and decided to wreck the galaxy.
Naughty boys.
Naughty boys.
Naughty boys.
Naughty. But you do have several other significant factions active during the Heresy, like the Mechanicum, and the civil war within the Mechanicum itself, with the Schism of Mars and the Titan Wars. Like, there's entire sections of the books and the lore where there's Titan war battles on the scale that even they put the ones in the 41st millennium to shame.
Yeah,
and the sheer scale of them. There was a planet which, quite literally, the event is known in the lore as the Titan Death.
Wow.
It was that much Titan on Titan action. It was
hot Titan on Titan action. Hot because the plasma reactors were exploding. It was very hot.
Just that thermic reactor pulsating with power.
Honestly, after my first game of Heresy, my thermic reactor was pulsating a little bit.
001.
Oh no.
But the scale of the Heresy was so huge, and like, you've got the Mechanicum, you've got the Solar Auxilia, and you've got the Imperialis Militia, who and the mortal soldiers of the Heresy actually formed, I would argue, 90% of the forces of manpower that fought and died.
Yeah, because it's like there were hundreds of thousands of Space Marines, but there were billions of mortals that
there was millions of Space Marines.
What's the millions?
Millions of them.
Okay.
I think the Dark Angels alone were about a couple 100,000 or something.
Yeah.
And that was the Dark Angels alone.
Yeah.
And like, the Ultramarines were huge. They were one of the largest legions near the end of the Heresy. It's why no one argued with Gulliman.
Yeah. Also, he turned away.
You will read the book.
Yeah.
Why? Because I've got the whole fucking Ultramarines still, bitch.
I don't read the script. The script reads me.
But it is a Marine focus. There is a focus on the Marines, but there is, and I can never pull it away from the Solar Auxilia, the Imperialis, and the Mechanicus. There is these other factions active. It's just a lot of the focus narratively in the story is on the Astartes. Yeah, which is where the it's a Space Marine game kind of comes from, in my opinion.
I think there's basically no Black Library books solely focusing on like the normal humans. There's like one or two here and there, but I think
there's a couple.
But I think focusing on I'm not a lore guy, which I know will upset a lot of Heresy people, but I'm not really a lore guy. I'll get there. Okay, I'll get there. But
how dare you?
I know, but I'll get there. But I think what really stood out to me as a 40k guard player going to my first game of Heresy was how much my army felt like Guard. Like there's always that worry. The one thing that's always sort of held me back from Heresy has been like the fact that I wouldn't be able to play Imperial Guard. Oh, Militia's not Guard. Militia's not Guard. It was quite striking to me that it felt like my Guard army felt like more of a Guard army in 30k than it did in 40k, because and we're not going to be shitting on 40k here today, guys. Don't, if that's what you came here for, that's not what we're going to be doing. But inevitably we are going to be drawing comparisons, because we both play 40k when we both now play 30k, and me coming into this the first time, I'm not going to be able to help but draw comparisons. And you don't really realize how much you miss a 50-man conscript blob until you've got it in front of you again.
See, I never had that pleasure. Because when I went into the hobby, I came in as a mechanized army from the get-go, so I never bothered with conscripts.
Yeah.
But I entered on infantry platoons and veteran squads.
Yeah.
So I still entered on that era of the Guard, and the fact that you could, like, your veteran squad, you want to give them carapace armor, pay the Grenadiers upgrade. They gain carapace armor now.
Yeah.
Shotguns, fucking go for it.
Yeah, shotguns, man.
I am so peeved when I came back into the game. I was like, what do you mean I can't use my veterans?
Yeah, my shotgun veterans, yeah.
What about my veterans with the shotguns? What do I do with them?
It really feels like so many of the old options have been ported over from 40k to 30k. So like I think there's a temptation to say this is only a game for old grognards like myself, and I think that's wrong, but we'll circle back around to that in a moment. Just looking at it I'll circle back around to the idea of coming into Heresy from a new perspective, not just from an old perspective. But obviously I'm someone that played basically all the editions apart from second edition of 40k, and so it really did feel like coming home. It was like, this felt like I was playing my army of old, and being able to run Leman Russes and Malcadors and my Sentinels. Obviously Sentinels are already Leman Russes and Sentinels are a thing in 40k, but being able to run those classic iconic Guard units, and then some of the crazy ones like the Malcadors and stuff, which I only really just got before they went in 40k. It was actually really cool being able to like use my classic Guard army and to just directly translate in. If you're someone who plays 40k right now, whether you're a Longbeard or you're a veteran, if you're someone that has 5 Leman Russes, a Baneblade, some field ordnance batteries, some Sentinels, and 100 or so infantry, maybe you've been building up your force over the course of 9th and 10th edition, you can take that exact army and use all of it in 30k, which is just wild. Like, it's wild. Yeah. Now, you won't be able to use your Rogue or Dawns, to be fair, but you'll be able to use everything else.
Well, you say that, but you can... Here's one of the things that Heresy is very big on is kit bash.
Yeah.
And when I say proxy, in the sense of if going by intention of the unit, and the best example I can give is there's a unit the Dark Angels have, which is called the I'm going to get the name wrong here. The Extincto Automari or something. It's a lobotomized Man of Iron.
Yeah.
The AI that tried to overthrow humanity, the whole reason they don't like robots with AI intelligence. And it's an army, and the Dark Angels have lobotomized Men of Iron, but there's no official model.
Yeah.
Because the description of them is, they can look like fucking anything.
Brilliant.
And so I've seen some conversions which look more like stereotypical Terminator-style robots, and more that look like biomechanical horrors with a bit more on the mechanical side. Some of them that you could fit in a Dark Mechanicus army and it looked perfectly at home.
Yeah.
The variety in like Heresy's conversion community, and as a consequence as well in a proxy element.
Yeah.
For stuff like the Imperialis Militia especially, is huge.
Well, I think yeah, I think there's really we need to hammer that home with the Imperialist Militia. Like, there are no official models, so you can use whatever you want for, as long as you adhere to the golden rule of your opponent can understand what they're looking at. And you can pretty much use anything that you want. And obviously you can use stuff from 40k, but you could use 3D prints, you could use other stuff. But what I really like about the militia, and what I think makes them, like you said, you could probably get away with using your Rogel Dawns as Malcadors, which is kind of crazy, but you probably could, because they have the greatest army rule of all time. Now, we've been talking kind of high level. Now we're going to get into some nitty gritty. The rule that made Chansey's brain leak out the side of his ears. Third line. So for those of you, third line is basically one of your army rules, which says the militia wasn't really given very good equipment. And so, in fact, they basically got the handoffs from the Imperial Army. All of the best bits got scraped out and sent to the Solar Auxilia. And so what the Imperial Arlis Militia's equipment really, what the vehicle data sheets especially represent, is old, outdated patterns of armor, which you recognize, like older, like Lehman Russ patterns, old Malcador patterns, stuff like that. But also, this is the important thing, locally produced equivalents and variants of those more iconic things. So who is to say that your Rogel Dawn isn't just the local pattern of Malcador? I mean, all you'd need to do is, Malcadors can take heavy bolter sponsons. They can take a demolisher cannon in the front, so you do. I guess you wouldn't put the nipple stubbers on, but you have a Rogel Dawn with a battle cannon, with a coaxial autocannon, with the pulverizer in the front, a stubber on top, and a couple of heavy bolters, and you have got yourself. I mean, I think the only one there that wouldn't quite work would be the autocannon. I don't think it would have a coaxial autocannon, but that's the only weapon on that model that wouldn't be totally WYSIWYG. And here's the best bit, and this is what we kind of found at our game, was it doesn't matter if your unit, if you're militia especially, I think this is probably the only time you can really get away with it. It doesn't matter if your vehicle has a weapon on it, which it doesn't actually have. So, for example, Lehman Russes can't take sponsons in Heresy, because in the militia it's third line. So what that means is it's got the weapon, but it doesn't work because it's not been
no ammo.
Well, there's no ammo because it's not been maintained. So so you can be like,
or worse, it doesn't work. There is ammo, but the ammo's stuck inside.
Yeah, the ammo's stuck in it. So yeah, that's, I think, the beauty of the militia and third line, is it really allows you to use pretty much any models that you want, as long as a main battle tank looks like a main battle tank. And even if you're, I think that second point I was making regarding like having weapons on there that don't actually exist is actually really important, because I've been talking a lot about palette cleansers recently on my channel, things like Bolt Action and Old World and stuff like that. But the reality is that even though those games are significantly cheaper than 40k, they're not free.
No. Which, yeah, it's an investment of money. Investment, I don't know if it's the right word, but all of them are expenditures of money that a lot of us we all earn, and it's you gotta weigh, is this what I want to spend my my hobby money on?
And there's the big question of, do you want to go and spend, even if it only costs you 200, 300, I say only relative to being 40k, you know, if it only costs you like the price of a couple of combat patrols to get your Bolt Action army together, or to get your Old World army together, that's still between, you know, 200 and 300 pounds to invest in a game you might only really be playing for 3, 6, 9 months until 11th edition comes around, and then GW temporarily fixes the game again and all this kind of stuff. Like, all the 11th edition hype just gets you back in, because everyone tries to leave 40k, they always get sucked back in. So the great thing about Militia, and I think what's got me so hyped for it, is that my rules are a free PDF, and I can use all of the models that I currently have, unless I'm planning on going to some absolute cutthroat tournament. Hint, I'm not.
Yeah.
I can just literally use the models that are on my shelf right now, and whether you don't I mean, yes, Heresy is generally played at 3,000 points, and yes, things are a bit cheaper, but there's plenty of ways that you as a guard commander right now, if you've got a reasonably sized guard collection, can just go, screw it, I'm playing Heresy for a few games just to get a feel for it without having to buy a single thing.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. And amusingly, there's also this is more talking about the actual pricing as well. You spoke about it about a month ago or so, where you were talking about Old World and the pricing of Old World and how, for lack of a better term, how cheap it is comparatively. Yeah. And Heresy has the same thing going for it. When on the fundamental units, when you start going into the Forge World stuff,
of course,
that's Forge World. That breaks every rule.
When you mean you start going into the 3D printing stuff, it's even cheaper.
I don't have a 3D printer, but Forge Worlds, where it gets a bit weaker on the price argument. Yeah, they £15 for 10 shoulder pads.
Ooh.
It'll do it. But they are sculpted and they look good. But like, one of the things I noticed, and I did this last year at Thanatos 2024, was I took my Horus Heresy Dark Angels and I ran them as 40k Dark Angels. Because as a generalization, the Heresy models can proxy in quite well as 40k Marines. Well,
they rescaled them, didn't they? So,
yes,
like a Marine in 30k is very similarly sized to a Primaris. Yeah, but very similarly sized to a Primaris Intercessor. If you stick the hat with the fucking plume on it, he's absolutely the right size. Yeah.
The only problem you really encounter with Heresy into 40k is the base sizes. But if you're playing at more casual events, potentially, because that's all that interests you for 40k, you could probably get away with it if you get into Heresy and you're like, I wanted to play a Space Marine army because I want my guard in 40k, but I want my Space Marine army to maybe go into 40k as well occasionally.
That's cross compatibility.
It's cross compatible as much as the creators of Horus Heresy would rather it wasn't. See what I did there.
Somebody's decided it shouldn't be a good idea, but we don't know who.
Someone. We're probably in a boardroom.
Yeah.
But it is semi cross compatible. 40k, we have that with 40k with the Solar Auxiliary tanks, like Rust Demolisher.
Yeah.
That's the Heresy one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful kit. I built a few of those recently. Yeah.
I've just finished these last night, so all 3 of them.
Yeah.
2 a day.
2 a day, every day, man. That's the way.
I wish I had the money. But it is that's one of the things I have kind of liked about Heresy is it is surprisingly cross-compatible, and you can gain the multi-use out of the armies. It's easier to move a Heresy Marine army in the case of Marines to 40k than 40k Marines to Heresy. But the Astra Militarum, or the Guard, as we should really call them, is completely cross-compatible. I think it's great. I don't think they work very well as Solo Auxiliaria, but they do work well as Imperialis.
Yeah, I think. I think it's a really, like, we want to hammer that point home, and I think we've successfully done that, because, like I said, people who are either thinking of investing money in this or thinking of trying Heresy out, you want to make sure that you're not going to be getting into, especially if you are thinking of spending money on it, you're not going to be spending a bunch of money on stuff that might end up sitting on your shelf 2 years out of 3 every 40k edition cycle.
Yeah.
You want to know that if I think about getting into this from a Marine perspective, that I'll be able to use those Marines fairly, in some areas, like a Predator's a Predator, a Rhino's a Rhino, a Marine with a Bolter, Marine with a Bolter, they can come over fairly easily. And likewise, if you're a Guard player, you want to know that you can buy a bunch of stuff and it's going to be useful in both games as Imperial Arts Militia. So I think that's the big. I think on the modelling front, I would say it's very, very accessible if you have an existing collection, especially if you're a member of this community, because I think it's fairly obvious, but we are Guard focused. So obviously you might be looking at like, but I collect Eldar. Well, firstly, fuck off, you collect Eldar.
Oh, Tim, I got some bad news for you.
I know there's fan rules for Eldar, but joking aside, I don't no real hatred towards Eldar or Altar or anything like that. I'm only busting your balls. So the point is that, like, if you're a member of this community, more than likely you play Guard or Guard adjacent. You're pretty much set up to go straight into Heresy. But let's talk about the Heresy rules themselves a little bit. Now, we touched upon things like third line and stuff, but we're gonna talk high level about Heresy rules generally speaking, things like just intuitiveness and terrain, and then I want to dive into the militia. I want to get into the militia. Yes. So,
oh god, not again. Not again.
They're going out the walls!
They're going out the goddamn walls!
I am the human Tyranid. That's the way. So, the first thing that I noticed about Heresy rules, generally speaking, is it reminded me very... I think I've got the big rule book here. So, look at this absolute tome of a fucking rule book. Okay, it's a chunky boy. And, like, there's a lot of lore in here, don't get me wrong, but there is an absolute shit ton of rules. Like, this book is probably a 200-page rule book in terms of rules, with, like, 100 pages of lore. Probably more than that. About 100 pages of lore. So it's a weighty tome. And obviously, if you see something like this, and you're like, how the God Emperor am I going to read all of this? Honestly, I think you just sort of jump in. Even if you're a new player, I think you just jump in, because what is very interesting about the Heresy rules is they're quite complicated. They're quite badly written. They're quite poorly laid out. However, they're quite intuitive. There's very little of this. It's abstract, bro. It's like, well, how many guns can I shoot with on this vehicle? How many guns does it have? How many guns can see me? Well, I can see you with this las cannon and this turret, but this las cannon on this side is blocked by the building. Okay, well, that las cannon can't see then. There's none of this, well, I can see you from the tip of a track, so now everything can fire. Which is, honestly, whenever new people get into 40k, the first thing that always happens where they go, what?
That was my reaction when I entered 40k.
Yeah.
In the modern 40k, I should say, was, what do you mean I don't need facings? What do you mean I can see you around the corner? I can't. The gun can't see you.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're someone who lives and breathes 40k, it's like, of course I can see you from the tip of my track. But if you actually take a step back for a moment, come out of the 40k bubble for a moment, and look at what's kind of happening in front of you, you realise that actually there's a lot of stuff that, just because you know 40k makes sense, but if you were someone who was coming in from the offset, it would be very, like, jarring, like, what, like that, how does that make sense? I think there's definitely an element of, as 40k has become more competitively focused, it's become more abstract, because competitive players, because they do live and breathe it, they don't have that sort of immersion breaking moment. To them, it's like learning like a language. The words don't make sense if you don't understand the language, but if you speak the language, it makes perfect sense. Whereas what I found with Heresy is, and of course it should be said, there was definitely an element of, you never forget how to ride a bike. There was definitely an element of that as someone who's played a lot of old Hammer. There's definitely an element of that. But even so, there was a lot of stuff when it was just like, this just makes sense. Yeah. And I think the thing that really, what I really enjoyed about it was, even though the rules were quite complex, they were quite smooth. I know that they were clunky before, but really when I say clunky, it's like, as you described it, nested rules. It's like,
yeah.
You check that you go
rule within a rule within a rule within a rule. You go, what the fuck does this rule mean?
You check the glossary in the index, and it'll be like, I'm just pulling one out of my ass, but it's like, check. It's like cavalry. So you go to page 195, and then it'd be like, the rules for cavalry can be found on page 307. You like go to page 307. It's like
mounted.
It's like this gives them the mounted rule. Mounted can be found. It's like, so it's definitely a bit clunky in that way. But what I mean is, how in 40k there's a lot of dice that need to be rolled. I think that's what slows the game down so much. In Heresy, it's like, if you want to advance, you just add your initiative, which is a given stat on everyone's on each data sheet. So you don't have to roll to find out how far you're going to run. It's just, my guys will move 6. If they want to run, they run.
They move an additional 3.
Additional 3.
And a Marine moves 7, adds their 4.
Yeah.
They move faster. And it then also feeds into that narrative aspect that the game's trying to...
Marines are fast. Yeah.
Marines are speed, somehow.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Marines are stealth. Yeah, how are you stealthy in power armor? You can't see me! Clunk, 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 clunk.
We painted it black, bro, and we put WD-40 on it. It's absolutely stealthy. That's the case.
Precisely. But you mentioned about like the... I don't even know if abstract's always the right word, but like 40k in its current form, like doing a charge in 40k is something that me and you learned quite well in the Tyranid tournament in January. To get a charge off, you need to just get to within engagement range.
Yeah.
Well, what's engagement range? Well, it's an inch off the base, but you need engagement range or base contact. Heresy is just, can you get to the base?
Yeah.
Yes. No. It's an arbitrary answer.
Yeah.
And Heresy has a lot of those cases.
But why does engagement range actually exist when you think about it? I mean, someone will be able to explain it, but why does engagement range exist? You have to get within an inch. Why? Why not just
go to base?
Why not just go to base? Yeah, I think
base contact's also it's harder to argue, in my opinion. Base contact.
Yeah,
my model's touching you. I am going to touch you now with the chainsword.
I can touch you now. Random Harry Potter moment thrown in.
It's been a while since I watched those films, but like I've maybe had one Heresy game every quarter, because I just organising it with my main play group and just organising it. I think this quarter's been the most games I've had in like a whole 2 years.
That's because it's winding down. 40k's winding down, so Heresy's winding up.
Yeah. Well, I had someone in my club go, "Oh, I have an Alpha Legion army." Do you? Why haven't you told me this? I'll play Heresy with you. Yeah, I just don't play it much. Like, okay then, I'll play Heresy with you, and I've got to play Heresy again. And there was some bullshit Alpha Legion do, which made me absolutely livid. But there was no arguments about, am I in base contact with? Do I get to base contact? No, then I don't make the charge. Well, 40k, because I've had this argument. Do I get to within engagement range? Well, no, I'm not sure.
You're a few millimeters out. For fuck's sake. Yeah.
You're with it. Because the rule specifically, and I'm sorry, I'm going to a specific rule as written.
That's okay.
For engagement range is you get within the inch.
Yeah.
And you're in melee.
Yeah.
And I've had arguments where it's like, well, if you're over half the inch, you're not in engagement range. You're in the engagement range bubble. You are in.
Yeah.
And I've had this argument. Well, Heresy, it's, am I in base contact? Bop.
Yeah. And it's the same in games like Bot Action. You just make it. I think personally, engagement range is more there to facilitate like fighting in ranks and stuff. But it feels like it's had a bit of a, and we don't want to sort of the engagement range episode, but
Welcome to
Engagement Rage Glory. Engagement Rage Glory. But I think it's had a few weird knock-on effects, and it's had a few weird knock-on effects. Like now, whenever you go to tournament, everyone hides over an inch away from walls because you can fight through walls because of engagement range.
Yeah.
There's all this. Yeah, there's some weird because it's abstract. How you fight me through a solid wall? It's abstract, bro. And so what I found, bringing this back to Heresy, what I found was such a breath of fresh air. And I'm sure there will be many specific scenarios where the rules completely fall apart. That happens in Old World all the time, and you just kind of have to. But because there's this general sense of we're trying to just intuit our way from point A to point B. It happens to us a few times. If you come across a scenario where we don't know the rules well enough, and we don't know where to find it because we're both relatively new to this game or relatively inexperienced at this game, it's not our main squeeze. We just went, well, what feels right? It might not be right rules as written, but because the general feeling is we're intuiting our way to victory here. Let's just come up with a solution that makes sense to both people.
Well,
and no gamesmanship.
I think a good example of that was the cover.
Yeah.
Like in the Heresy book, there's like 2-3 pages of just defining the different covers. But it's like short ruin, tall ruin, wide ruin, ruin with a Starbucks sign on the side. It's a bit like that, and that is when you're playing rank and flank Warhammer. That I think matters more. But so Old World, for example.
Yeah.
But in Heresy, it potentially just gets a bit bloaty.
Yeah.
But and how when we played, I kind of initially ruled it as, well, does it obscure line of sight? Actually obscuring line of sight. Yep. Okay then. But I can see part of the unit. Then there's a cover in sense because half the unit's kind of diving into cover. Is there a bit of terrain in the way? Cool. That's adding to it. Is there a blown up tank? Yep. Okay. You kind of played it on just well, I'd say I'd struggle to get if I was in that situation. What would I want? In a sense,
and it was like it's dense. It was so dense between the drop pod, the terrain, my dude's in the way. It was so dense. It was like it would be very difficult to shoot past. So it's a 4-up. That's probably wrong. It made sense to us, and there was a really, really funny moment at the end of the game where we both muddled up 40k and 30k at the same time because there's that big square building with like the red barrels on it, and you were like, "Oh, I can't see your Lehman Russ because it's behind the building," but the building was quite low, and so our 40k brains were like, "Oh, well, he can't." Because the ruin's infinitely tall, so we can't see through it. And then we both had this moment when we were doing the filming, but we ended up, sort of doing it live. We sort of did it a little bit, what was meant to be the turn summary, we did it there and then. And it was like, hang on, you can just see my turret. You can just, because it's just line of sight. You can just see the turret, so you just shoot me. You're not trying to like. Because it's intuitive. We've got so used to this square perspex flat thing with like nothing on it equals an infinitely high ruin. Well, actually, no, it doesn't. This big building. How much can you see my tank? Yes, then you can shoot it. That was it. And it actually was a real moment for me personally when I was like, well, that just makes so much sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of rules in Heresy, and that, in my opinion, are common sense rulings. They are literally, well, what makes sense? And I will point out, this is actually where there is a vulnerability in Heresy. It's why the tournament scene in Heresy is a little
sweaty
and cutthroat from what I understand. I will admit I have not been to a full tournament event for Heresy, but having spoken to a couple of people who do go to them, they are a little bit more sweaty. There is oddly enough a lot of Alpha Legion there. -2 to every measure towards them is massive.
Yeah.
Suddenly that 12-inch charge is impossible.
That's crazy.
that 10-inch charge is a 12-inch charge. That's massive.
I see. What you do is you don't charge them, and what you actually do is you just shoot them to death.
Well, there's the thing. To get them rapid fire, you need to be within 10 rather than 12.
Yeah.
Everything is two more, which is challenging to deal with.
It throws you off balance, which is exactly what Alpha Legion should do, because
on brand.
You've been so used to being like able to like eyeball things, like I'll definitely be in rapid fire here, and then suddenly you're like, wait, I'm not doing as much damage as I thought I was doing. I'm not getting the charge. It's very, very Alpha Legion, and this is kind of leads us on to the next high level thing about Heresy, which is the flavor.
The mechanics of each faction has a flavor.
Balanced?
Like,
No,
definitely not. Fucking Imperial Fists are one of the most busted legions in the system.
If you're thinking of getting into this game for balance and you're looking for a good balanced game, just keep walking. Like you're not gonna have it.
You can have a well balanced game, but it's got to be a mutually balanced game by both players.
Yeah.
Like I will admit, in my own group, one of our group played Imperial Fists, and we all turned around and said, we can't play your Fists. And why not? Because we can't fucking deal with the Fists and their bullshit.
Yeah. Like, if you're going to... but the thing is, you just have to be able to have... And it's something that we all struggle with, like... What do they always say? Like, in a relationship, the most important thing is communication. What's the number one reason why relationships break down? Because people just didn't fucking talk, or when they did talk, all they could do is talk in like angry ways. And communication breaking down doesn't mean people aren't necessarily talking to each other. It means that people just aren't talking properly. And I think it's one of the big things that wargamers are getting better with. But you just have to be able to sit down with your mate and just be like, bro, I love you. I can't beat those Imperial Fists. So you won. And this is me admitting defeat. You won. Now, can you just tone it down a little bit? I'm not asking you to completely handicap yourself, but just that one. You take 3 of that really impossible unit. Can you just take like 2? I can deal with 2 of them.
Well, that was the irony with the Fists, was they were just good in general. To the point that we did a test game, or some of the other members of my group did a test game, 2-on-1, by the way. So and 2 different legions against one, so I had the advantage of 2 different legions on their side. One of them was Dark Angel's bullshittery. Which you encountered.
Dark Angels are very strong. I thought they were very strong.
They are a strong legion. They're one of the stronger legions. And they turned around and said, we have tailored our list because we want to prove that we can't beat you.
Interesting. I never played Imperial Fist, so I have no idea like what makes them so powerful, but I've seen a few other people online chatting about them being a bit spicy.
They are very efficient, and they don't really have any significant downfalls.
This is where every 40k Imperial Fist player right now, with their shitty doctrine, it's just like, my ancestors are tactical marines.
It is difficult to fight fists in Heresy.
You've been fisted. I can tell, Chansey. There's a look in your eye. You've been fisted.
Well, actually, I was the only person to beat the fists.
Well, there you go. See, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
But it was due to lucky rolls, and I blew up all his bullshit right at the start due to a lot of unnatural 6s.
Okay, I'm just gonna say, sounds like sounds like you figured it out, man. Sounds like you figured it out. I don't know. As someone who's never played against them, sounds like you figured it out. I'm just saying.
No, I played this guy early on, lost the first game I played with him, played him a second time, and the only reason I won was because I brought something which was like, this will be funny. I don't know if this will work, but it'd be funny if it does. And it proceeded to work. Very well, in fact.
See, it's the thing, you scratch below the surface and suddenly all this... I reckon Heresy is way more balanced than 40k. I'm not saying that with a serious face.
No, is it fucking ass?
Now, let's talk about Marines too much, Chansey. Talk about two Marines.
Let's talk about his true finest.
The Emperor's true finest. His Imperialist militia. No. They are the children of the Emperor. They are the Imperialist militia. I am in love. It's so good. So Imperial Arts Militia are basically the PDF. They're not even PDF. They're not the Guard. That's the Imperial Army. They're not. They're just like humans.
They're a militia.
They're a militia. They're the lowest rung of the Imperial war machine.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call them PDF because PDF, while not as standardized as the Imperial Guard in the 41st millennium, the PDF at least are semi-standardized.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, but it's like basically not. We won't get into the lore and specifics of it, but the Imperial Armed Militia, for all intents and purposes, are the Imperial Guard equivalent from 40k. Solar Auxilia are also another Imperial Guard equivalent. Some people like to say Solar Auxilia are equivalent to Scions. I personally think that's a giant bag of shit because they don't deep strike or anything like that. Basically, you've got two flavors of Imperial
kind of in
Guard.
between.
Yeah,
kind of that area in between where between the militia and what would be Scions.
Yeah,
which are part of the Imperial Army. There's a couple of regiments that would effectively be the Scions.
Yeah, so Solar Auxilia, the way I would break it down for a 40k player looking at this is Imperialist Militia are your classic Horde Guard style. And Solar Auxilia are for the Guard players because Guard players do tend to fall into two camps. You've got Horde Guard players and you've got more mechanized Guard players, elite Guard players. And I would say, there you go, one of each on this particular podcast. And I think Solar Auxilia, if you're someone that likes Mech Guard, you could fairly easily go over to Solar Auxilia. If you're someone that really loves the horde of Guardsmen, then you play Imperial Arts Militia. Now, the reason I mention this is because, Imperial Arts Militia, I didn't even try, and I had 140 infantry in my list. There's some people that are going to be listening to this and are going to go, well, I'm never going to get into Heresy, then am I? Because there's no way I have any interest in collecting that many infantry. And that's fair. That's actually fair, because infantry are a slog to paint. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to play Heresy, but there's no way I'm painting a minimum of 100 to 200 infantry, then look at Solar Auxilia, because Solar Auxilia, you can have the equivalent of 6 squads of infantry rocking around inside your dedicated transports. And yeah, they're called Aurochses, but I've seen people... Transport's transport at the end of the day. Don't get too worried about it, especially if you're just playing with mates and it's a pallet cleanser. They'll be able to figure out there's 10 dudes inside a metal box. But you've got Russes, you've got Malcadors, you've got Baneblades, you've got Shadow Swords, all this kind of stuff. Your Solar Auxilia would be more at home if you're a Met Guard player, but I haven't played those guys yet, so we're going to focus on Imperial Arts Militia, which was the Meme Guard, the Horde Guard. And honestly, it's truly an example of quantity has a quality of its own. And so, to give you an idea...
There was no quality there, sir. It was all pain.
They have a bunch of rules that are meant to be debuffs, but actually are so shit, they boomerang back around and end up being actually buffs. Right, so we mentioned this third line thing before, which is very useful from a modelling point of view. It also turns out to be very good from a rule point of view. The reason why it's considered shit is because any of your vehicles that get damaged take a penetrating hit. Now, to try and explain this in 40k terms, vehicles in Heresy have wounds, but they only have like sort of 4 or 5 wounds, because typically if a las cannon gets through and damages you, you'll take like 1 wound from it. Okay, that's called like a glancing blow. The las cannon, it basically matches your toughness value as it would be. If it does that, then it's glanced you, it's done a slight damage to you, so you take a wound, you lose 1 of your 4 wounds. But when they roll to wound, let's say...
Reporting for duty, sir!
Let's say they need to roll 5 to wound, a 5 to get the wound. If they roll a 6, what they've done is actually rolled more than they needed to wound you. That's called a penetrating hit. So they've not rolled what they needed to wound, they rolled better than what they needed to wound. This represents the shock just punching through, and it starts to do some fairly catastrophic damage. Now, penetrating hits are really bad. Like, you'll get 1 shot popped from a penetrating hit. Like, imagine if someone shot your Land Raider or shot your Dawn in 40k, and because they just rolled high enough, they took it out in one shot. That's why there's a big distinction between glancing hits and penetrating hits. In Imperial Arts Militia, you can never take a glancing hit. Now that sounds like, oh sweet, I can never take glancing. No, what it means is you always get penetrated. So if they wound you,
was a lot of penetration.
Yes, matron. So what that means is you are getting one shot popped a lot. So that sounds really bad, right? Like your Russ is getting one shot at left, right, and center. Yes, but to balance it out, your Leman Russes are worth 0 victory points, no matter the scenario. No matter the mission, and many missions do rely upon you killing stuff. No matter the mission, no matter the scenario, they can never get any victory points for killing your vehicles. Now, that actually does include Super Heavy Chansey, which we got wrong in our game.
Yeah, I was watching the stream when that came out. Fuck.
It's all right, man. We were both learning. Normally, you get a lot of victory points for killing a super heavy because it's a big asset. So losing a big asset is a big deal. In the militia, it's like, oh, we found this Baneblade at the back of the shed, so it's not worth anything.
Dobson just dusted it off.
Yeah. So what's meant to happen is your tanks are absolute shitboxes, but your infantry are where the opponent can score victory points. However, this is a slight problem when your opponent, me, brings 100 infantry with the special rule expendable. Now, what this means is my infantry can never score any points. They can never score any objectives. What it also means is they're never worth any victory points either.
Meanwhile, the Space Marines fighting them.
The descent into madness that Chansey had over the course of this game, when we were trying to work out victory points, and it was like, okay, so you give up like 10 victory points. Over the course of your whole army, you give up like 10 victory points. It's like, Tim, how many victory points do you give up? 4.
It wasn't even that. It was something like 3.
Because I hadn't done it on purpose. I just brought loads of tanks and then like 100 shit infantry and then 40 good infantry. And the 40 good infantry were the only ones that were actually worth anything. And it was just like, I killed your commissar. Yeah, he's not worth anything. He's expendable. He can't score, but he's expendable.
He's expendable because he was attached to the expendable squad.
Yeah, he becomes expendable. So it's just...
Oh, it was maddening.
You nearly tabled me and you scored like 4 victory points. It was actually hilarious.
Yeah.
But the thing is, militia do very poorly in other games which rely upon like holding objectives and stuff, because a lot of your units struggle to actually score because they're essentially like worthless. And so if you tried to list Taylor and you were like, I'm only going to take stuff that it never gives up any victory points. Sure, in like one of the missions that we played, like Blood Feud, you'd be amazing. But any other mission, you'd have some advantages, but there'd also be like quite a lot of disadvantages to doing it. So it's powerful in certain places, but what's just so funny about it is like your guys are just so worthless.
Yeah, it is comedic. Unfortunately, the pure descent into madness that I was having while watching this happen was just, oh.
What a Baneblade!
It was! I was like, why? I killed the damn thing!
It's the biggest unit on the board. It's worth nothing, mate, sorry.
I think it was the fact, as dealing with it, was the fact that you had a Baneblade that when I arrived and you literally went pop and popped a whole unit with the damn thing.
Yeah.
And then they go, wicked. Well, at least I'm gonna get something back out of this.
Yeah.
And then it put another unit, and I'm like, stop this.
Stop. Stop it.
Stop it.
It was so good.
Alpha strike the damn thing, because I'm like, I am not dealing with this for another 3 turns.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, it's like, I need to kill the Baneblade. Nah, not worth it anymore.
Not worth it. I think what it perfectly encapsulates, I think that's the right word. What it perfectly shows, me can't do a big word. What it perfectly shows is the double-edged sword of... No, I wouldn't even call it double-edged sword. It perfectly encapsulates what we were talking about before. Encapsulates, that's the word. I'm missing the S out. Is what we were talking about before with Heresy not being balanced but being flavorful. Yes, and I think this is something that is a double. I think when we talk about double-edged swords, it more applies to 40k than it does to 30k. In 40k, the idea of a Baneblade being like worth nothing in a mission that involves you killing each other wouldn't be balanced. So they would make it so that the Baneblade was worth points. But that takes out the flavor of it, because when you actually think about it, one Baneblade where none of the wiring's working, the crew manning it are all part-time weekend warriors, and the fact that this thing is basically rusted through and they've only just really managed to get it ticking over. It's like one of those, like, it's like when they like dragged out the T-34s museum pieces and we're like trying to get them like running and stuff, like, you know, like in more modern conflicts, which we won't allude to too much, like they were drag. This thing, it belongs in a museum. It belongs in a museum. Very
diplomatic.
Exactly. But maybe they were dragging out these things, and like this, there were these things that should have been nowhere near battlefields, and yet they were being, you know, pushed into service in one way or another. That's your third line Baneblade. It's a tank that really shouldn't be there. It's a museum piece. It's part of someone's collection, or it's something that literally is rusting at the back of a storage yard. And so when you look at and it sort of perfectly encapsulates the militia, which is like, when you think about it, if you were an Astartes strike force and you sent 100 Marines down to this battlefield and you came back with 50 or 60, 40 or 50 Marines, you've taken 50% casualties. But what have you actually killed? You killed like, what, 400, 500 militia, you know, crew and everything. That's nothing. You've lost 50 Marines, man.
Marines what are we doing here, Sarge?
Yeah, what are we doing here, man? So it kind of encapsulates that in a kill points game where they focus on killing stuff, what would be the greater loss to the respective sides? A bunch of conscripts who have had lasguns pushed into their hands and tanks which the Imperium had no intention of using, that have just been pulled out of the storage yard, or the Emperor's Angels. Well, even if one of those Marines falls, it is a greater loss. Even in the Heresy, when Marines are everywhere, it is a greater loss. But then you take that same force of militia and you put them into a mission where they've got to, like, take a vital resource. And it's like, yeah, you have a bunch of conscripts that are like trying to like hold this water purification plant or this generator. And it's like, well, 50 conscripts, that asset isn't really secure, is it? They're one bad morale check. They're one, why the fuck are we here, Sarge? Away from booking it and getting out of there. And so the only thing that a squad of Marines holding an objective, that's a secure objective. 50 to 100 conscripts holding it, the Imperium doesn't consider that secure. So the interesting thing is like, the flavor is there, and some missions, and this is kind of what you have to get your head around, and why I stopped saying it was a double-edged sword with 30k. You kind of have to reprogram your brain. There are going to... Stop trying to go into Heresy and being like, it's not balanced. Leave that at the door. You are going to go into games of Heresy and you've probably lost before the game began. At that point, you have to, as the player, kind of focus on the story and the headcanon and the lore and your homebrew lore then focus on like winning and losing the game. And it was actually Northern Exile, he popped into a stream when we were talking Heresy, and he said you have to see almost Heresy as a collaborative exercise. And when you stop seeing, so obviously there's winners and losers, but when you go too cutthroat, too competitive with it, the game kind of starts losing its charm a little bit.
It loses the point.
Yeah, it loses the point a little bit. And I think it's important to understand it's still okay to play to win, but if you're on the receiving end of it's a bad matchup, then that's okay. You have to set your own sort of kind of victory conditions at that point. Like what you just have to kind of, honestly, you just kind of have to roll with it, laugh it off, because sometimes you're going to go into a game and you're just going to win it. And sometimes it'll be a close game. I'd say 80% of your games will probably be very close. 10% of the time you're going to have an absolute shit one, and 10% of the time you're going to have an absolute smasher.
Well, the game we had went from me winning to us drawing to me losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because when we worked it out, we're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Oops.
But it was such a... If we actually just focus on the narrative of that game for a moment, the Imperialist militia have been mobilized. And they're advancing through the city. I like to think they were on their way to what they thought was going to be like the important positions they were going to have to defend. And so they were just advancing through the city. And then they were completely... that's why I was so aggressive in the first few turns, because I wasn't expecting a fight. And then the Space Marines descended from heaven, ambushed, started smashing the entire area. And if we look at that fight, I had like 4 models left over at the end of the game. I had
4 tanks and a squad of infantry. Oh, and a transport.
Yes, that's all I had left from 140 infantry and like 9 tanks and a Baneblade. That was just... It was supposed to be like 80% casualties overall. And the Marines were... I'd say you talk about 60% casualties. But the thing is, like, the Marines have like dropped in. They've like smashed this reinforcement column. But the reality of the situation is there are 10 more reinforcement columns moving through to these, and whilst you smash this one, the assets have been secured elsewhere. And so I just really like the idea of like, we come away from this, and even though the Imperialist militia got screwed in terms of like casualties, in the grand scheme of things, they were able to pull out the victory. But you have to put that effort in. You have to put the effort into like, what is the story that's being told here? And it doesn't have to be like a grand saga every time, and it shouldn't be seen as a chore. It should be seen as something fun. You want to tell the story.
Yeah.
I
do agree there. It's like with with Lord Governor Mordian and his exotic collection of Xenos art.
It's called hentai and it's art.
it's culture, thank you. With its built-in virus to destroy all vehicles nearby.
Literally, I downloaded it from LimeWire, and my Rhino got a virus.
LimeWire. Oh, that's why. That is so dark age of technology.
Exactly.
But because how I envisioned it, it's like when you started making jokes about how it was the Lord Governor, I was like, okay, so it's an assassination strike. It's to cut the head of the snake.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And actually, that's the story from your perspective, yeah.
And it was the Lord Governor leading his men valiantly into battle, as he should do, while looking at some cultured material. And suddenly, what's that rumbling? Oh, bother. As these drop pods arrive, and out emerges the Angels of Death.
Yeah. And so I guess the story, because it was a very close game, I think there was only like 1 point.
It was very close.
It was a draw until the post-battlefield analysis turned out that it was a victory for the militia. But I see it as it was a draw because it was a learning game. So winning and losing really had very little impact on it. But I really like the idea of the story. You assassinated the Lord Governor, but was the price you paid worth it with all of the brothers that were lost? Yeah.
It depends, because you could look at it from a narrative perspective and go, well, the head of the snake is gone. Does this, in the wider recompliance of Mordia, because that's where we made that's where we were joking it was.
Yeah.
Does this mean the Dark Angels' recompliance of the planet is more complete, or that the Dark Angels don't have to deploy the destroyers correctly?
Yeah.
Destroy the world, which might be a significant loss to the Imperium.
Yeah.
Now we know what happens in the end. Mordia is a loyal world. Lovely regiments come from there. I hear the 50th Mordian Rifles look pretty good.
I've heard that too.
I've heard that too. Bunch of weirdos in green though. I prefer their sister regiment, the Morkian 50th Rifles.
It's on the way. It's on the way.
One day. But you can, even because I've heard the point some people make. Well, I already know the ending of the Heresy. The Imperium wins. Does it?
Yeah.
Did it win? I know, but yes, but the whole we know the ending of the Heresy, but we don't know the bits in between, and that's where, as players, we can go in and make our own stories, like with the purging of the execution of Lord Governor Mordian.
Mordian the First has been
Mordian
executed.
the First.
His son Mordian the Second has now taken over. Every time he dies, I'm just going to add a number on to the end of it.
What we don't know is several centuries in the future there will be a small life rock, the Rock Mordian, or whatever we want to call it, legally distinct from another certain character who is kept in a rock.
The Lion of Mordia.
The Lion of Mordia. No, I was actually referencing Pontus Graw, but
all right, fair enough. Pontius. Ah, yes, the Pontius. Yes, the Mordius. That's what it is.
The Mordian.
The Mordius. Yeah. Yeah, and the personality just gets transferred from one clone body to the next, and that's the alien Curios, man. Still going to this day.
They just take the rock and whack the next person's head.
Yeah. It's like tentacles.
Where's my smut?
Where's my smut? Damn it! Yeah. But I just I think people who like I feel like there's quite a few myths around Heresy. I don't think it's Marine versus Marine. I don't think. I think there's so much flavour to the non-Marine factions that they're so appealing, and I think the idea of saying, "Well, we know the ending of the Heresy," is so fucking ass backwards, because, like, it's just a sandbox for you to play in, and if you don't have the fucking imagination to be able to come up with your own battles, then bro, that's a problem that you've got. You know, don't put that on the rest of the players, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand it from an element with the sense of some people want not full creative freedom of the stories, but like with 40k, because it is still being written, quote unquote.
Yeah.
There is no, for example, I'm trying to think of an example. Karl the Betrayer. We know he lives into the 41st millennium. Admittedly, he dies and gets better, but the point is, he dies multiple times and gets better.
It turns out I wasn't quite as sick as I said I was.
And then I died, but I got better. But some people, for Karl the Betrayer himself, if they're using, they might not want to play World Eaters or play Heresy because, well, it's Khan. I know he lives. It feels there's no weight to fighting Khan, and I can get that. I can understand that. But Heresy, is it any different to using epic heroes in 40k?
No. It's like whenever Leontus dies in your game, oh that shit, we need to get a new fucking Lord Solar now. No, you don't think in those terms. It's one of those arguments that I think people make, but the moment it comes into any kind of scrutiny, you realise it's not an argument, it's an excuse.
Yeah. I mean, I do get it with the collection side, because getting into another system, which we touched upon earlier, that can be intimidating. But no, I think that's just one of those things. It's just one of the challenges of the system. But no,
I think it's, to be honest, I think if you're looking at Heresy as a palate cleanser, then just play it with your mates and proxy your way to victory, man. It's fine. And if you enjoy the game so much, then invest in it. There's nothing stopping you from trying before you buy. And and I think honestly that's the way I'm going to be doing it. We'll see what happens with Heresy 3.0. But at the moment, this is very much palate cleanser. Now, we're going to wrap things up. But speaking of Heresy 3.0, there's rumours that it's going to be out this summer, June, July. Now, the time this video goes out, it will be May. So, or maybe end of April, beginning of May, we'll see. But my point is, what do we think? Heresy 3.0. Bold predictions, baseless rumour mongering. Where do you think the game's going to go?
I think it's happening. I've heard rumours it might be this summer as well, but I've also heard rumours it might be next summer. So
I think it'll be this summer, and then they'll make it, because Judo likes to milk us. They'll milk us for Heresy this summer, and then they'll milk us for 11th edition next summer.
Well, we had Age of Sigmar last year. Year before was 40. Yeah, it was 40k, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. Time is a construct.
Yeah, it was. So last year was Age of Sigmar. Year before was 40k, because that was when Thanatos, and you weren't sure if 10th was going to come in during the event.
Yeah.
The year before we had Heresy.
Yeah.
And Old World came in last year at the start of the year.
Yeah, but they didn't expect that to be anything, so that was
but that's but that's potentially a reason why Heresy might be coming sooner than we think as well, because they didn't expect how well Old World would do.
Yeah.
Old World is still doing reasonably well.
Cathay's doing, but is going to be
Cathay's Cathay, Kislev. When they put Kislev for Old World, that'll put a fresh injection in as well.
Yeah.
The problem is there's 3D printers go brr.
Yeah.
Heresy, I think what we'll see with Heresy is potentially we might see some more stuff towards the Siege of Terror. Because in fairness to the previous editions of Heresy, from what I understand, the first one was like the early conflict. The second one has been just the conflict as a generalization with the Age of Darkness, because the original start set was the Battle of Calth.
Yep.
So I could see the final set being the Siege of Terror.
Ooh. Interesting.
And I think we might see
a bold prediction indeed.
I think we might see Pattern 4 Power Armor released in plastic.
I've been told, I read it online somewhere.
From someone.
That it will be Mark II.
No.
You don't think?
Mark II and Mark III is too similar. The difference between Mark II and Mark III is literally just the helmet.
Chancey, we're talking about a game that has more than one kind of tactical marine which has exactly the same stats. Do we really think SDS gives a shit about things being too similar?
The reason I think Mark IV is it's disappeared off the store.
Has it? Interesting.
It's coming off the store. It's now sold out online.
Interesting. Okay.
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 In the old scale, so pre the rescale. And we think they've been hinting at going, we're going to rescale all the Mark IV for you, because everyone's been like, I'll buy Mark IV. Hell, I would buy Mark IV. I'd buy 2 boxes of it.
It is good stuff.
And then fold them into my regiment, my army, because I mix my squads up in army.
Mark IV's one of the power cables, isn't it?
Mark IV's the one with that, the kind of, for lack of a better term, what the Primaris helmets are.
Yes.
That is based on Mark IV.
Yes.
So I think we'll see Mark IV. If we get Siege of Terror, there is a chance we might see some true scale Mark VII.
Wow.
Which is Aquila stand pattern, which is the modern Space Marine.
I think that's when GW cuts Firstborn from 40k, and then
I think that's what they're going to do.
That's the chopping point. Yeah.
I think they're going to do this, and then next year with the new 40k edition, they will kill off the Firstborn, and suddenly all the Firstborn will be in Heresy.
Yeah, and it'll be like it's Siege of Terror, so it's all really late pattern shit. So that's how people can be. It'll because GW will want to try and placate people in some small measure, even if it's just lip service. They'll try and placate them.
And beyond that, I think we might see Demon Mortarion in the next phase.
In resin.
In resin. Well, we've gained Demon Angron.
Yeah.
We've got Demon Fulgrim.
Yeah.
We haven't seen Demon Erebus.
No.
Erebus wasn't at the siege. But we haven't seen Demon Perturabo yet. Not Perturabo. Demon Mortarion. Mortarion's appearance during the Heresy was very similar to his modern appearance, but he was slightly different because they were fresh off the Demon Forge.
Yeah.
So I could see them releasing a resin Mortarion.
Interesting.
And I think what we'll see is a bunch more of the tanks coming to plastic because we've still got a few of the tanks in resin.
Yes.
And they've been slowly migrating all of the Heresy tanks into plastic kits.
Yeah. I think for me, if Heresy 3.0 comes around, I will obviously I'll expect that it'll be marine focused at first, but I would love to see, as they have done with this edition of Heresy, them really focus sort of in the latter half on expanding Solar Auxilia, because they've got a bunch of updates, like PDF updates and stuff, where you can now run. I think it's like you can run things like, I'm not sure if it's the Macarius, it might be, but there's a bunch of vehicles that Guard used to be able to run in 40k, which they've removed, and now they've sent a lot of them will already end up in plastic over on 30k, like the goddamn Valdor and the Malcador Infernus and all that kind of stuff. So I would love to see them continue to just bring over basically more tanks, because as a Guard player, any excuse to buy more tonks, I want to buy more tonks.
Yeah, I don't think we will see a plastic Macarius for 30k.
Good on, man, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Plastic Macarius, you heard it first.
I am going to be really honest. I am still huffing the copium, and I think we will see a 40k Macarius. Not soon, maybe not this edition, but I think we will see it. Because I'm going to be really honest with the Krieg, and we are slipping into 40k, sorry.
It's alright, we're wrapping up. Last final thoughts.
With the Krieg release, it was a little half-baked. I think there's more. So I think some of the tanks that we could see in 30k, I don't think we're going to see. I think we're going to see them in 40k. But I do agree we're going to see possibly see more Guard tanks. We might see the Minotaur, for example.
Yes.
Which would be absolutely hilarious, and also the fucking worst kit to ever assemble in history. Because let's put 2 Earthshakers on the back of a tank. What could go wrong with a kit like that?
I've only ever seen one in real life, and it was glorious.
I've never seen one.
I'm going to make a bold, unsubstantiated, hope-filled guess for what's going to come late in third edition Heresy. We've had the militia, worst the worst. We've had the Solar Auxilia, best a man can get without the black carapace. It's time for the regular Imperial Army. We are going to see the return of the old rogue trader / second edition Necromundan Spider style guardsman with the crazy las guns and like the motorcycle helmets. That's what we're gonna get That's it. You heard it here first. And if that ends up happening, seriously, someone needs to like report me to the black ships, because I keep making these crazy predictions, and more often than not, they keep coming right. But I got a feeling, man. I got a feeling Imperial Army is only a couple of years away.
So if we get Imperial Army, and if I get this right, we're both going to the black ships. I think if they're gonna do it, it's gonna be it's not gonna be the bog standard Imperial Army, because we've got the chaff, we've got the mid infantry. I think we'll get the elite of the army.
Already got that solo auxiliary, isn't it?
No.
Okay.
They're the army elements that are generally attached to the Astartes. I think what we will see is something like the Lucifer Blacks.
Interesting.
Who are one of the most prestigious army regiments in the Heresy.
They guard Terror.
They do.
Yeah.
But prior to that, they were then deployed elsewhere. And even into the 41st millennium, they still exist. They still guard Terror. They are still maintained. It's a regiment that has existed since before the Heresy.
Interesting.
And they are a slight fan favourite, to my understanding.
They are, yeah.
In the Heresy community. And so I could see them making Lucifer Blacks because it's a good old cow to milk.
Interesting. Well, you heard it here first. Imperial Army for Horus 2.0 confirmed. But I think we've definitely come sort of full circle here. We've talked about Heresy at a high level. We've talked about militia. We've talked about our game. We've talked about rules, lore, flavor, and we've even made some wild predictions. I think that probably just about covers everything. What I can safely say is, at this point in my hobby journey, I am now officially square-based and heresy-pilled.
I suppose there's only one final question to ask you, Tim, regarding it all. Who do you swear your oaths to?
Ooh. Well, I always feel like I am a loyalist when I run the Mordians. Okay. However, it does say in the lore that it was the militia who swore allegiance to the War Master that were the ones that featured lots of Lehman Russes. So maybe
the War Master, eh?
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like a loyalist in my heart. But
that's what makes it so much better.
I think I'm doing the right thing. God damn, the Dark Angels, they should never have turned against the Emperor. Don't worry, Horus. We know that you're you're doing this for the Emperor. We'll do our part, maybe. To be fair, I have got Traitor Guard and I have got my Mordian, so there's definitely an element of why not both?
Why not both, indeed.
Chansey, I want to say once again a huge thank you for the game. You have given me the bug. I am now very excited for Heresy, and also want to say a huge thank you for taking some time to talk to me today about this with a bit of a follow up, because I think it's been quite interesting, because obviously we can't quite capture everything when we're in the game when things are happening, and it's good to just be able to sort of get it all in one place. But I hope you guys back home enjoyed this as well. Let me know if you are excited for Heresy content or just Imperial Guard stuff in general. And what is your predictions for Heresy if it is going to be coming out in a couple of months? But I think that just about covers it all. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.